Hello, dear friends, welcome to our YouTube channel, USA Football Zone, latest football highlights. September 5, 2021, Sao Paulo, Brazil. A palpable tension hung in the air, the kind felt only during a Brazil-Argentina World Cup qualifier. We are speaking of football's two fiercest rivals, facing off on the same pitch. Two legends of the game, Messi and Neymar, locked eyes, looking as if they were ready for battle. The whistle blew, the game began, and millions of people across the globe remained glued to their screens. And then, just 7 minutes into the match, something entirely unexpected occurred. The game did not stop due to a foul, an injury, or even a VAR review. It halted because several men in suits stormed onto the pitch. They were quickly identified as officials from Brazil's health regulatory agency Anvisa. And in an instant, chaos erupted. The players were left completely stunned. At one point, Argentina's Nicolas Otamendi shoved an official away. A heated altercation broke out near the touchline. Absolute pandemonium ensued among players, coaches, and officials. Argentina captain Lionel Messi was heard asking, "We've been here for 3 days, why are you doing this now?" The referee, looking visibly bewildered, was powerless to intervene. The most anticipated match of the South American qualifiers was abandoned. This single incident sparked an international controversy, a year-long legal battle, and a staggering bill running into millions of dollars. So, how did a World Cup qualifying match descend into total chaos? And how did it end up costing so much money? To understand why this event was so significant and consequential, you must know the backstory. This was no ordinary friendly match. This was a match that embodied a century-old tradition of rivalry and served as a crucial milestone on the road to the 2022 World Cup. Brazil sat atop the CONMEBOL qualifying group, with Argentina right on their heels in second place. Yet, as always, the honor of both nations hung in the balance. The stage was set for another intense and thrilling battle at the Neoquímica Arena in Sao Paulo. For the first few minutes, the match unfolded exactly as expected. The rhythm of the game had just begun to take shape, that familiar cycle of attack and cautious defense, but the tension on the pitch paled in comparison to the storm brewing off it. The game came to an abrupt halt when a group of officials deliberately entered the field of play. The initial reaction was one of utter shock. Players on both sides assumed it was a security breach, perhaps a spectator had invaded the pitch. But these were not fans, they were government agents, and they had arrived with a specific objective. As the reality of the situation became clear, astonishment gave way to outrage. Led by Messi, the Argentine players formed a protective cordon and began arguing with the officials. The Brazilian players, including Neymar, merely watched, on some in disbelief, others with a sense of detached amusement. The referee and match commissioner found themselves trapped in an impossible dilemma. On one side stood the laws of football, on the other, the laws of a sovereign state. CONMEBOL, the South American Football Confederation, announced that the match had been officially suspended, pending the referee's decision. Acting on instructions from their federation, the Argentine players left the pitch and headed toward the dressing rooms. The entire world watched in stunned silence as one of football's greatest spectacles crumbled before their very eyes. On everyone's lips was a single question: why? The answer to that question lay not within the rulebook of football, but rather in a global health crisis. The entire uproar centered on 4 Argentine players who, at the time, played for English Premier League clubs Aston Villa's Emiliano Martinez and Emiliano Buendia, and Tottenham Hotspur's Christian Romero and Giovanni Lo Celso. The root cause of the problem lay in Brazil's strict COVID-19 protocols, in force during September 2021. At that time, the United Kingdom was on Brazil's red list. Brazil's regulations were unequivocal: any non-resident traveler who had been in the United Kingdom within the preceding 14 days was barred from entering the country. The sole exception applied to Brazilian citizens or permanent residents. For everyone else, it was a strict and inflexible rule, designed to prevent new variants of the virus from entering the country. The allegations leveled by Brazil's health surveillance agency, Anvisa, were extremely grave. They claimed that 4 Argentine players had provided false information upon entering Brazil. Specifically, the agency alleged that the players had failed to disclose that they had traveled to the United Kingdom, a direct violation of the country's immigration and health laws. Anvisa declared that this posed a serious health risk and recommended that local health authorities immediately order the players into quarantine, thereby preventing them from participating in any activities on Brazilian soil. 3 of those 4 players, Martinez, Romero, and Lo Celso, were part of Argentina's starting lineup that day. Despite Anvisa's demands and despite the teams having been warned just hours earlier, the players took the field. For Brazil's health officials, this was a test of patience. They watched as their federal laws were brazenly flouted on the international stage, and they decided to take action in the most dramatic manner possible, decided to intervene. Public health and legal conflicts now took precedence over the game itself. Shortly thereafter, the entire affair devolved into a chaotic blame game played out before the global media. Both sides insisted on presenting their own distinct versions of the truth. Anvisa's stance was straightforward: they were merely enforcing the law. They stated that, on the eve of the match, they had met with the Argentine delegation and CONMEBOL officials to discuss the regulations. They claimed that, on the morning of the match, they had formally notified the Argentine team that 4 of their players were required to isolate and were ineligible to play. Officials even noted that an inspector had attempted to enter the Argentine dressing room prior to the match but was denied entry. According to them, having faced complete disregard for their authority, taking the field was their only remaining option. Naturally, the narrative within the Argentine camp was entirely different. Coach Lionel Scaloni was furious. He adamantly insisted that no one had informed him that the 4 players were ineligible to play. He argued that, even if an issue did exist, it should have been resolved quietly at the team hotel, not through such a public confrontation in the middle of a match. Messi's protest on the pitch encapsulated this sentiment perfectly. Once the match had already kicked off, what was the point of waiting so long to intervene? The Argentine Football Association believed they were operating under a special CONMEBOL bubble protocol, much as they had during the Copa America months earlier, and felt that this protocol superseded local regulations. They felt blindsided and publicly humiliated. The Brazilian Football Confederation found itself caught in a bind. As the host nation and the entity responsible for the match, they held little to no significant authority over a federal health agency. Ultimately, amidst the heated controversy, the Argentine team announced their decision. They packed their belongings, left the stadium, and headed straight for the airport, leaving behind the Brazilian team, who were left to play a solitary training match on an empty pitch. The match was completely abandoned. Amidst a storm of accusations and with reputations hanging in the balance, the entire fiasco was finally brought to the attention of a single authority: FIFA. This tale of bureaucratic chaos and international intrigue was not over yet. FIFA's verdict would determine who was right, who was wrong, and who would ultimately have to bear the immense cost of this entire affair. If this deep dive into one of football's strangest controversies has piqued your interest, be sure to click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. You certainly won't want to miss how FIFA's decision finally came down, or what the ultimate, shocking twist in this story turned out to be. For 5 long months, the football world waited with bated breath. FIFA's disciplinary committee launched a thorough investigation, meticulously examining reports from referees and match commissioners, as well as statements from both the AFA and the CBF. Finally, on February 14, 2022, the verdict was announced, and it was a devastating blow. First, FIFA ordered the match to be replayed at a date and venue of their choosing. Their reasoning was that this entire debacle was the result of failures on both sides. This was not a victory for either nation, rather, it served as a punishment for everyone involved. Then came the penalties, the very part of the story that inspired its title. And these penalties came with a hefty price tag. The Brazilian Football Confederation was fined a staggering 500,000 Swiss francs for violations regarding organization and security protocols. The Argentine Football Association was ordered to pay 200,000 Swiss francs for their own failures. Additionally, both associations were hit with an extra fine of 50,000 Swiss francs for the abandonment of the match itself. All told, FIFA's initial bill amounted to 800,000 Swiss francs, equivalent to approximately $900,000 US. But it didn't end there. FIFA also turned its attention to the players: Emiliano Buendia, Emiliano Martinez, Giovanni Lo Celso, and Cristian Romero. Each of these players was handed a 2-match suspension for violating FIFA regulations. The message was unequivocal. FIFA was holding everyone accountable: the federations for their administrative errors, and the players for their respective roles in breaching the rules. Neither party was pleased with this outcome, and both immediately announced their intention to appeal the decision. True to their word, both the AFA and the CBF appealed the ruling. On May 9, 2022, a new decision was announced. The FIFA Appeals Committee upheld the most contentious aspect of the original ruling: the match had to be replayed. The 50,000 Swiss franc fine imposed for the abandonment of the match was also upheld. However, the appeal was not a complete waste of time. The committee acknowledged that the culpability did not lie solely with one party and recommended a reduction in the severity of the penalties. A decision was reached: Brazil's 500,000 franc fine was halved to 250,000, while Argentina's 200,000 franc fine was similarly reduced to 100,000. Although this constituted a partial victory, the total sum of the fine still amounted to a staggering 450,000 Swiss francs. The players, too, remained suspended. Thus began the final and most bizarre chapter of this entire saga: the match that no one wanted to play. By then both Brazil and Argentina had easily qualified for the World Cup. Consequently, the match had evolved into a fixture of little specific significance, one that some had even dubbed a glorified friendly. Both Brazil's coach, Tite, and Argentina's coach, Lionel Scaloni, vehemently opposed this notion. They argued that playing such an intensely competitive match right before the World Cup posed an unnecessary risk. It carried the danger of their star players sustaining injuries or facing suspensions over a meaningless game. With both federations in agreement against replaying the match, the matter was referred to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Finally, in August 2022, nearly a year after that chaotic scene in Sao Paulo, a consensus was reached. The AFA, the CBF, and FIFA all arrived at a settlement. The decision to replay the match was officially rescinded. Under this final agreement, the AFA was ordered to pay a total fine of 150,000 Swiss francs, half of which was suspended. A portion of the fine was to be donated directly to the World Health Organization, WHO, to aid in COVID-19 relief efforts. Ultimately, the entire affair was settled. Thus, this year-long dispute, triggered by the sudden intrusion of health officials onto a football pitch, did not end with a dramatic bang, but rather with a quiet administrative settlement. The match that had been ordered to be replayed was ultimately cancelled, simply because neither team wished to play it. Despite numerous appeals and concessions, the entire saga cost both federations millions of dollars, to say nothing of the damage to their reputations and the farcical spectacle they presented to the world. It was a perfect storm of conflicting regulations, abysmal communication, and intense national pride, all further exacerbated by the pressures of a global pandemic. In the end, the final decision was not rendered by a referee, but by lawyers. In the long and illustrious history of international football, this incident stands recorded as one of its most bizarre and chaotic chapters. But it leaves us with one final question. In a situation where there was no clear winner and where health protocols clashed with the rules of the game, who, in your opinion, bears the most responsibility for this bizarre spectacle in football? Was it the Argentine players, the Brazilian health officials, or the Football Federation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.